Shemai friendy, and welcome back to my channel. My name's CaitlinAnwyn for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in Planet Zoo. And I'm continuing with the Africa Zoo today with an African elephant habitat. And I found a myth about African elephants, and I'll put the article where I found this in the description. And one of the myths try to explain why elephants are so smart. And a tribe in Kenya has a myth that elephants were once human, and I thought that was like really interesting. And I'm not sure whether my train of thought really was a straight line in this one, but I went from elephants being really smart, the myth from a tribe in Kenya thinking that they used to be human, and I thought maybe it would be fun to do a school type of building because elephants are smart, they used to be human, so they need to continue to learn, right? I'm not sure whether that train of thought kind of goes in any sort of line. It might be a little bit more like a tree when it branches out in lots of different directions, but that's what I was going for with this. I wanted to make an elephant school. So I was having a look at some buildings or school buildings in Africa, and I found this youth centre that's in Central Africa, and I'll put the link to that as well because I really like the shape of this building, and I thought it would go like perfectly with most of the other buildings in this zoo. So that's what I thought I would build for their hard shelter. It's like a school. And I was really drawn to this building because there was a lot of different angles to the structure itself. The roof, of course, is one angle, and then the supports for the roof were angled inwards as well, but at a different angle. There's so many different angles to this, I'm going to say it like a million times, but I just thought it was like really interesting and a bit of a challenge to create, of course. I've built so much in this zoo already. It was fun to have a little bit of a challenge, and of course I couldn't resist using the wood pieces from the Africa pack again in this build too, and it helps everything kind of feel like it is connected together rather than every habitat being a completely different thing. Having the same sort of materials keeps the habitat consistent. You'll have to forgive me, I've literally just finished recording the Life is Strange games for this week, or episodes for this week. I would definitely recommend watching those. Not just because I made them, like just play the game or watch the game, someone else watch the game if you like. It's an emotional roller coaster, as usual in Life is Strange games, but it's just so much fun. I'm losing my words a little bit. I should be more practiced at this. The amount of times I've commentated over my builds is too much to count anymore. This is actually the 18th video for just this Africa Zoo, which actually makes it the longest speed build series I've ever done, which you probably wouldn't be surprised with. The Africa continent has the most amount of animals in the game, I think. I shouldn't be too surprised that I've spent the longest amount of time trying to fill out this zoo, and I still have plenty of animals to build habitats for as well, but I would be interested to maybe start a different zoo in a different continent soon. It feels like we are close to having an announcement for a new DLC in Planet Zoo, doesn't it? I feel like there should be an announcement soon, but maybe they're waiting until maybe closer to Christmas. Thinking about like the spaces between the Aquatic Pack and the Southeast Asia Pack, and between the Southeast Asia Pack and the Africa Pack, it feels like we're due a new pack. But if we don't end up having one this month or next month, I think maybe we could do something spooky for October. I love Halloween. It's probably one of my favourite holidays. And you can probably tell, like, I have a Jack Skellington on my bookshelf all year round. But then I've had fairy lights since last Christmas. Is that laziness, or do I just like the vibe? Bit of both. But yeah, maybe we could do something spooky themed, like a spooky themed zoo, or just some spooky themed individual builds. Or even if we get a new pack, just whatever the theme is from that pack, give them all spooky habitats. Like, yeah, fuck it. And the front of the inspiration building didn't have the stripes going across it like the sides, but I didn't like how the fences looked along this front part, so instead I'm just going to follow the same pattern as the sides of the building. So we're just going to have those stripes all the way across. The front was a lot more difficult than the sides because it was a slight slope. Instead of it being like straight, it was sloped slightly, so it was even more difficult to get them all lined up and to all fit in that front part. But I didn't want the L-shaped part of the building, like this longer part, to have the same effect on it, so to have the same roofing. I wanted this part to be like flat because that's what it looked like on the reference pictures. I wanted to use like the fencing from the bridge that I'd built in the safari habitat. I really like these wooden pieces. They go really nicely in with the colour scheme. And I really like this sandstone brick as well that I used. It blends in really nicely with the surroundings and the like terrain, so it feels like really natural, and because it like blends in so well, you can barely see this building, especially with like the open roof part. And what's a school without a classroom? So I've set out to try to build some desks and like a mini classroom in this area too. I didn't want to totally fill it out because the elephants are such a large animal, they're not gonna be able to get around a lot of objects, so I've had to leave the inside of this building quite empty. The desk was easy enough. I just used the smallest square panel for the top of the desk and the thin logs from the Africa pack as well for the table legs. But the chair was tricky. I ended up using this corner piece. I think this is supposed to be for a roof maybe, and duplicating those together to make it like a little square. I wish I found these for the chimpanzee pub interior. I missed that little square wooden object, so I made the chairs in that pub completely different to the chairs in this classroom, let me say. And I couldn't find anything that was like thin enough for like the chair legs, so I ended up using rope. If you don't look too closely and you don't think about like the concept of a rope, and you just think of it as like a patterned chair leg, it'll be fine. But can you imagine an actual chair being held up by rope? Planet Zoo and physics don't really work out that well, but it looks nice anyway. It's like a nice little pattern for the legs of the chair. And for the school book, worksheet, whatever you want to call it, on the desk, I used a clipboard from the like clutter items, props in the construction tab. And then for the like whiteboard, I wanted to put some maths times tables on it, so like the elephants were learning something. And I'm using the tiny font again that I use for the cheetah habitat. The link to this font blueprint will be in the description. This one's just a really great size. It's not recolorable like FlexiColor, which is disappointing, but I really enjoy the size of this font for quite a lot of my habitat, so I use this one often. I hope at some point Planet Zoo Frontier release a smaller font, because we don't always want to use letters and numbers for like a massive sign. It would be helpful to use it for something like next to an education board. So like most of the fonts or the lettering in Planet Zoo is just too large for most things. I chose the 9 times tables because they are my favourite times tables. I don't know whether this sounds like too geeky, too nerdy. 9s were always my favourite because they seem hard, but they're not. There's always a trick for the 9 times tables. The one that I enjoyed doing the most is writing out from 0 to 9 down and then 0 to 9 up, and that just ends up making all of the times tables. So it's like 0, 9 and then 1, 8, 2, 7. They were always my favourite to do. I wanted to make sure that the rest of the habitat looked nice too. And there's a viewing point at the kind of back of the habitat. So I wanted to make sure that there was nice things for the guests to look at all the way throughout the whole habitat. So there's not one like focus angle. There's interesting points throughout. Trying to replicate the sort of technique that I used in the safari habitat with the rocks lining the terrain, and I kind of did it in the lion habitat too. So again, trying to make everything consistent. Talking a lot with my hands today. And once I was happy with the placement of the rocks, I put a little bit of foliage, greenery, plants popping through the cracks of the rocks to break up the brown beige colour of the terrain and the rocks. Just give it a little bit of a pop of colour. Some purple bushes as well. These purple bushes are beautiful, and that pop of colour really makes the rocks stand out a bit more too. I really like using this technique for the nature side of habitats to give it a little bit more detail without using too many different objects. So this area at the back is just going to be the more wild side of the habitat, like it's more natural. There's just a lot of plants, like it's taken over this side. Or maybe this side is like more natural and hasn't been touched as much by the humans. And then like more towards the river, that's where there's more man-made objects like the building itself and some of the enrichment items like the waterfall enrichment item that I put by the river. Like this is more like the elephant side and the river is more of the human side, but they're all kind of connected through the myth about elephants. I thought maybe a playground would be nice for the front of this school. I don't think there was a playground for the youth centre, but schools and playgrounds sort of fit in my mind, like somewhere for the elephants to play, I guess. This is just purely decoration. I'm using the same playground that I built for the red pandas and just recolouring the objects to fit in with the theme of this zoo. Because the playground objects were very colourful. I made like a rainbow playground for the red pandas. That might be in the iCards somewhere. I did that for the Southeast Asia Zoo, and I just wanted to give this playground more neutral tones with browns and beiges, creams instead of the multicolours. I probably should have replaced some of these wood pieces with the Africa Pack wood pieces, but I still wanted it to feel like maybe a little newer than the weathered wood. I don't know whether I trust a playground that looked that weathered. So maybe not. Maybe it was better to have something that looked a little cleaner. And I just set them just outside the front of the youth centre. Like this is where the, I know we call it a yard, not like a back garden yard, but like the school yard. And I painted a little bit more sand and soil around that area so it looks a little bit more worn out, where the elephants would run around and play around in that area. That's pretty much it for this habitat. Let me know whether you want to see some spooky themed habitats Planet Zoo build for October, because we're getting there now. But there will be only one more Planet Zoo build until October. Wow, September went quick. I guess now I'm not going back to school, it does feel a lot quicker. And let me know what you think of this habitat. I will try to upload the blueprint for this habitat and the hard shelter separately and put the links to everything in the description. My Steam workshop is always linked in the description, so you can check that out if you have Planet Zoo and you want to download some of my builds. Also, let me know whether you think that we're going to be having a DLC soon. Watch now, the DLC will be released after I record this, and I'm gonna sound a bit daft like there'd been a trailer or something. I am pre-recording a little bit for this week's videos, and yeah, I'm gonna leave it off there. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you would like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload on Mondays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Mondays and Saturdays are for Life is Strange True Colours, and Wednesdays will be Planet Zoo speed builds. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!